rider. Oh, and he's on. Oh, yeah. For all you SoCal boys, this was caught on the jerkbait too. Oh my God! Get him! A good one. I know. Woo! Oh! Look! Ah! Oh! Double! I got a freaking double on my prop bait! I made this, finished it up literally 2 days before. I got a double on it, one on the front and one on the back. So this is what we're targeting on this trip. This is a leopard grouper. We call them cabria. It's kind of the slang term. And they flag cabria, one of the smallest grouper species in the world. Panama gypsy, world's smallest grouper species. Thank you, guys. It's a Gulf grouper. This is just a baby. They get just as big as your broomtail, 200 pounders. It's Mexican hogfish. For all my SoCal guys back home, this is Sea of Cortez version of a sheephead right here. Peek over there. Oh, golden out of the water. Oh my God. Holy shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another edition of the CCA California podcast. Good to be with you another week. My name is Chris, alongside good friend of the podcast, Howie Stretch. Howie, what's up, man?
How's it going, Chris? Just pretty pumped to be back on the show and in the co-host seat. So it's fun times always.
Oh yeah, it's this one's actually going to be super fun. We're going to talk all about Tony Reyes, but before we do that, Howie, you've got a message from our friends at Fishing Syndicate.
I do. Here at CCA, we are syndicated. Fishing Syndicate offers one of the best lineups of premium fishing rods designed, prepared, and built by fishermen for anglers of all ages. You. The Fishing Syndicate passion shows in each one of their quality products. They design and build quality products that meet and exceed the desires and demands of all anglers, which provide maximum strength, confidence, and long-term reliability while you're out fishing. From trout to cow bluefin, there is a Fishing Syndicate rod that will meet your needs at a very affordable price. Don't forget, custom orders are available too. Visit fishingsyndicate.com to check out the lineup or visit the shop in La Habra Tuesday through Saturdays, and don't forget to grab some FS swag as well. Get syndicated.
Thank you, Howie. And without further ado, we've got our good friend Ray Sharifi.
Sharifi. Yeah.
Ray, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this one.
Oh, I've been super stoked because we are going on Tony Reyes here in August, early August. And Ray, you've made a habit of going down there the last couple of years.
I have, yeah. It's been, I've ever since I kind of got into the Southern California fishery and like doing like real sport boat fishing the Sea of Cortez has been like a big dream of mine. And 2 years ago was my first time going to the Tony Reyes trip, and I did it again last November as well, and it's a lot of fun. It's very affordable. I highly recommend a lot of people go out there.
Yeah, so basically how we kind of crossed paths is I actually I saw all your videos on YouTube. And you've got a tremendous YouTube channel, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And so I ended up hitting up Ray on Instagram saying, hey, we're going on Tony Reyes. Do you want to come on the podcast, talk about it and all that? And that's why we're here.
Well, you said November, and November is probably one of my favorite times to go down, October, November, but specifically that like upper Sea of Cortez area that targets this style of fishing. Mm-hmm. August is going to be a little hot,
A little warm.
but should get some good exotics. And November's tough to beat when the weather cooperates, and a lot of times it does that time of year.
Yeah, November is kind of hit or miss on the weather-wise. That's when all those big storms come in. But when it does cooperate, it's really good. I think last year we did late September, but it was almost into November. Yeah. The season prior, we did November.
And the fishing was stellar.
So good.
Yeah,
it was so good. The year prior, the weather wasn't in our favor, and we actually missed like a day and a half of fishing. We just kind of hunkered down in the bays, like the natural bays, which is also super cool. Mm-hmm. But last year in September, the weather was really on our side, and we were able to fish every day. I actually really got to see what it was like, and it was so much fun.
Did you get to do any Corvina fishing in the bays?
I haven't done
or was it just kind of too blown out? There was
one day one night, I should say, that we had decent Corvina fishing, but nothing like what you're expecting, like on the jerkbaits and stuff. We were just fishing the night, like doing like small slow pitch stuff, trying to make bait for the next day. Coincidentally, it was all Corvina. It was so much fun.
That's cool.
They were all like 18-inch fish, and like we were like ready to throw them back, and the captain's like, "No, grouper bait." We're like, "Oh, really? Yeah. No kidding."
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Ray, let's kind of go step by step through the trip. I know we had talked about you had been there in November, but kind of run us through step by step, all the way from getting down there all the way to coming back up.
So getting down there, like, I know a lot of people are very afraid of going over the border, driving into Mexico themselves, especially if you don't have somebody who speaks Spanish with you. But honestly, it's really easy going. It's like a 2-lane highway all the way there. It's just open desert, very regulated, and it's a very easygoing drive, very scenic drive. It's a beautiful drive. I love it so much. That's part of the experience in itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you pull into San Felipe. From there, you hop on the mothership. You load everything onto the mothership, and you spend that whole day into the night driving to your first destination. And if the weather permits it, you can go up to like 200 miles south of San Felipe, and then each day you kind of work your way back to a new destination.
Yeah, you get to down to those midriff islands and stuff down there, and
yeah,
that's a magical place.
Such a magical place.
And you kind of you have the ability to get to some places and really focus on some fishing that is a little harder to get to from kind of where your main jumping off points are.
Sure.
If you're camping on the Baja or whatever, and so you approach with pongas, right? And there's the group's 20-something people?
You can take up to 20-something people, I believe. Off the top of my head, I think it's like, we were just talking about that. I think it's about 28 people. But the average trip usually runs about 18. That way you can fit 2 per ponga instead of 3 and be like kind of overcrowded. They're not big pongas. I think they're 18-foot pongas. So it's nice to be able to have that room.
So it's your captain and two anglers.
One captain, 2 anglers. There are situations where you can fish 3 people, and it's not like impossible. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, I'm with you, because you can either trade places casting with a friend on the bow, or have somebody on the bow and somebody on the stern, depending how you're drifting and set up and
exactly.
Stuff. But
and when your captain wants to fish too, like if being that you have a captain that wants to fish with you guys, if you have 3 people fishing plus your captain fishing, it becomes pretty crowded pretty quick. Yeah, especially if the bite's good, which a lot of the times it can be very, very good.
Yeah, and a lot of casting, right?
So much casting. So having 2 people fishing on the ponga is way more ideal, because you're able to actually maneuver and get those, like, point your rod in the direction you want to, instead of being limited to casting right in front of you.
Tell us a little bit about those islands. Did you guys make it all the way down there on your trip?
So this past trip, last season in 2023, we did get to fish almost everything that we wanted to, which was nice, because that was all the stuff that we missed out on the year prior.
Like from deep to shallow.
Oh, we did some deep stuff too.
Any significant grouper catches or anything on the deep pinnacles or any stuff like that?
I'm pretty sure I broke off on 1 or 2. trying to catch yellowtail on the reef. That's like those deep reefs, they hold everything. They got grouper, they got big pargo. And pargo is just such a universal term that's all snapper species, but there's so many different big pargo.
I was going to say, I think I'm familiar with like 4 different species that are all called pargo.
Exactly. And like for me, like I'm such a species enthusiast that like if I see something that I don't know the exact name of, I have to go home and do my research. So like even though like pargo is like such a universal term out there, there's so many different species. They have like the true red snapper, they have the barred pargo, they have like the red and yellows. I think there's even queen snapper if you go deep enough too.
Dang. And yes, I mean, a similar deal with the cabria. They call several different species cabria.
A lot of them are cabria, yeah.
But to us, cabria is leopard grouper.
Correct.
That's the stuff you catch up shallow. You can catch it deep too, but the fun part is catching it shallow. And
shallow. That's where we all cut our teeth on, right? Like we all want to do that cast and chuck and wind stuff, and it's so much fun fishing for those things. It's like hitting a brick wall when you hit those things.
Totally. Did you guys any significant yellowtail catches? Like, I've heard some bigger fish kind of out on those islands and probably on those deep rocks and stuff.
So you can catch yellowtail everywhere out there, as you've witnessed yourself, being that you've gone out there. You can catch yellowtail from 5 feet of water where you're catching the cabria to 200 feet of water where you're trying to yo-yo fish for deep water stuff. And it's not to say that those big fish don't come up shallow. There was one bigger yellowtail, I think it was 38 pounds on the spring scale. That was caught on the jerkbait targeting cabria. That was last year.
That's a big, wow.
And it was like where he hooked it was like the perfect spot to hook it. It wasn't in like the traditional cabria structure. It was more gravelly Pebble Beach. I was like, dude, if you hooked that anywhere else, you would have been screwed. But
speaking of species, you guys ran into some goldens too on your trip.
We did run into some goldens. You know, on our ponga, we didn't actually catch one. We got followed every day by goldens, though. This past year, which I was super stoked on, my ponga partner, who was Caesar.
Say, that guy did, I think.
Yeah, he didn't catch a golden. Actually, well, okay, so I'm sorry. That's all footage that hasn't been released yet from last year.
Sorry.
The year prior, my ponga partner did catch one. It was like a little, I don't know, maybe like 18-incher, but still such a special fish, you know? Like, seeing those things come up, like a giant Garibaldi, is just, it doesn't get old.
Yeah.
It does not get old. That is the holy grail that you can get. And if you can break a double-digit golden, like, you just caught a trophy fish, you know?
Oh, they're so cool looking.
They're so cool looking.
Here I am licking my chops for August. Awesome. Well, Ray, let's go back. Ultimately, how did you end up on the trip? Why did you want to go on the trip and all that? And, kind of what did you thought prior?
So I barely heard of the Tony Reyes adventures maybe the year before I went out there. I knew that the cabria fishing was like something I wanted to do for years, plenty of years. But I didn't necessarily know about Tony Reyes. I've heard the name Tony Reyes plenty of times, but I just assumed it was like somebody related to Gary Reyes or something like that, you know? But yeah, Tony Reyes Adventures, my buddy hit me up 2022, and he was like, hey man, I just booked a trip through Performance Tackle with the Tony Reyes trip, and we're going to go out for cabria, yellowtail. There's probably going to be Jack Crevalle if we get lucky. If you want to go, it's in November. It's a 6-day trip, 5.5 days of fishing, and it's just a mothership trip. And I'm like, oh, dude, that sounds awesome. And I, of course, being who we are, obsessed with fishing, I had to go and do my research, do all the video, research I could find. There wasn't a whole lot on the internet. I feel like I was kind of the start to that, besides Benji Kim, but he only had 3-ish videos, and they were very short. So I was like, man, there's so much more to this that isn't documented yet. And I saw that as a good opportunity for me, but alongside of that, I just wanted to go, period. Yeah. And it was something special. So I pulled the trigger. I signed up for it. Again, super affordable. It's do you know how much your trip is?
I think ours was $1,500
$1,500
for 5 days.
Okay.
Everything included.
Yeah, all inclusive. Bottomless beer, 3 meals a day. It's such a fun trip.
Food look epic too.
The food is so good. It's so good.
Is the are the berths where the bunks are? Is there a bunk room, or what's the sleeping situation on the?
So it's 2 bunks per room, except for on the bow.
It's all staterooms with 2 bunks.
They're almost kind of like staterooms. They're not as luxurious as what we expect a stateroom to be.
Yeah.
And when you walk in, they look like your traditional like bunk room bunks, like barely able to fit like.
But if you went on with a buddy or something, you guys could together claim one.
Yeah,
one
you and your
room
buddy
or
can
something.
claim one room, which is nice.
Yeah.
It kind of helps you avoid sleeping with somebody that you don't want to be in the room with.
Yeah.
But
it's important.
by the end of the trip, you're friends with everybody on the boat. You know, like
is it air conditioned?
each room has its own air conditioning unit, which is huge, especially
vital.
with you going in August.
Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be essential for you.
Thing is not stopping.
Yeah, it's pretty, and those ACs pump like a little bit can be too much.
It's
like
chilly.
Yeah, it gets chilly in there. But it's nice having that AC unit, and like some nights are like so nice. Being in September, the weather was so cooperative with us. It was comfortable. We were out there like, if you wanted to wear pants or a long sleeve, you were still comfortable. But if you wanted to wear like board shorts and a t-shirt, still perfectly fine. And at the end of the night, like we just slept with the door open just because that nice breeze was coming in. We didn't even have to run the AC last year. It was so nice.
Are there power outlets in the rooms?
There are power outlets in the rooms. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So it's pretty nice. Everyone gets their own room. The bunks look like a traditional bunk, but it's a little bit bigger. I actually captured that with my buddy. I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'3". My buddy's freaking like 6'7".
Oh, dang.
And then we like walk in and I'm like, ooh, these look like it's going to be like a traditional sport boat bunk. I don't know how comfortable it'll be. And I was like coincidentally filming at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's like, should we give a little tester on camera? I'm like, yeah, dude, hop in there. And he laid and he had like 4 inches of room behind his head. I'm like, oh, dude, if you fit, I'm perfect.
Yeah.
Slightly wider but much longer. So it's you'll be more comfortable than a sport boat bunk for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So do you, I think I saw in your previous year's series, you guys got there the day before, I think, right?
We did.
San Felipe?
We did. Honestly, if you guys have the chance to do that, I recommend it. It gives you like a little bit of relaxation. You don't have to be so stressed out about getting there like right on time, you know? You get out there, just kind of have a night to relax and like hang out with your buddies before it just gets serious, you know?
Yeah.
And it's nice. I do recommend if you're going to go, spend a day out there before the trip starts, or at least get out there like midday and spend the night out there before the trip starts. Yeah.
Where'd you stay in San Felipe?
I don't know the name of the hotel, but it wasn't too far from the strip. Like the main strip of San Felipe where like all the tourists go, we were maybe 2 blocks away from there. So we were just walking there to have dinner and stuff. It was so nice. Yeah, it was fun. We got there, we just started walking, and one of our buddies that was with us, he goes multiple times a year, and he's like, oh yeah, I know a couple good restaurants over there. And we just kind of started walking, and before we even got to the restaurant he was recommending to us, we're like, oh, this place looks really good, let's just sit here. So like there's so many different places that you can eat there, and all the food is so good.
Yeah.
And San Felipe is nice too. Like again, like everyone has that fear factor if they don't know Spanish going into Mexico. But San Felipe is pretty Americanized. Like almost every spot that you go into has at least one English-speaking person.
Yeah.
Is it pretty big, the town?
It's bigger for like a fishing village. It's bigger. All of those, when you get to the Sea of Cortez, there's always like these small little fishing villages along the coast. And they're small little towns, like Bay of LA is small, Gonzaga Bay is tiny. But San Felipe, as far as like a little fishing village goes, it's on the bigger end for sure. It's not like San Diego County by any means, but it's on the bigger end for a little fishing village for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, let's talk about what I've been looking forward to, some tackle.
Okay.
I know, on our trip, we're pretty much all jig fishermen. I personally like, when we went to Cedros, which I know you've been to, Howie, it was pretty much all weedless baits or those SP minnows or anything, or basically a stick bait.
Yeah.
Ray, I know you brought some props.
I did.
Give us the rundown.
I did.
What are we looking at for tackle?
So if you want to do Cabria, as much as we're like have our heart in the SoCal fishery and we want to chuck the jig at them, we want to fish surface irons at them, I'm not saying it can't be done, but you're going to go 10-1 on the hard bait versus surface iron. So like if you want to throw the surface iron just to check that off the bucket list, being you're a SoCal guy, do it. But it's not going to be easy.
Won't be as successful.
It won't be as successful. Not even close, unfortunately. But the right person with the right cast and the right placement, it can be done. And usually if they come up on the surface iron, it's going to be a bigger one. But as far as numbers goes, definitely the hard bait. 170 size jerk baits all day. The 150 being that it's like 3/4 of an inch smaller makes a big difference. For whatever reason, they won't eat that 150 as much. The 170 or bigger is what they want.
Really?
Even when they're keyed in on like 1 inch micro baits, they still want the 170 size. It's weird to see, like, because out here, it's so like match to hatch, you know. Like you see them eating small baits, you downsize. Out there, it's not the same. They still want that big size bait 24/7. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, from my experience, that throwing the small, because I've thrown both the smaller jerk baits and the like the 150s and the 170s. I feel like you just kind of catch more variety with the 150. You're kind of junk fishing. You catch a cabria for sure, but you catch other stuff too. Leather jacks and even triggers will come up on it, and and you know, little yellows that are in there kind of cruising the rocks. But I would agree with you that 170 size for the cabria, or even a 190.
Yeah, if you can find 190s, oh, for sure.
But a 170 is that
sweet spot,
mullet sized bait, because there is a lot of micro bait around down there. From my experience, there's also big mullet, and those I've watched cabria just blasting big mullet out of the water, and they have that little bit of that like silvery yellow. I'm a fan of like yellow colors down there. I mean, anything really works, but I've found the most success on something with yellow in it, like white and yellow.
Yeah, so that's something I was going to talk about too, is like, as far as the hard baits goes, you want a decent variety. You want your bright colors and you want your dark colors. And then you also might want one or two with a little bit of flash too. If there's cloud cover and then sun breaks through for a little bit, they go crazy for that flash. And
that's
like if you, we figured that out our first year, because like my buddy was throwing the flash nonstop, and I was just throwing like Wacky Mac. I brought my Wacky Mac.
Yeah, bust it open, man. Let's see.
I was throwing the Wacky Mac the first year. We both were, and it was I fished this same jerkbait the whole entire trip, and it was the only one that was producing for me. And it seems like every ponga is going to dial in on a specific color that works for them, and that just comes down to everybody. They'll eat anything. They will eat literally any color, but everyone gets their confidence color, you know. And for us this year was this one. I had to re-straighten the hook hangers a handful of times. But this jerkbait probably saw over 100 cabria in a single week, and I just retired it. I bent this hook back on the bottom, bent the hook back about 10 times, because again, it was my only one that was producing for me.
And those were replacement hooks, right?
No, these are stock.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so if you want to save cash too, like SP minnows, that's another thing, is like action for them is so key. They want a tight, fast-moving wobble. So like SP minnows almost have too much roll. Colt Sniper jerkbaits are very erratic, but they'll eat the Colt Sniper jerkbait because it'll be more streamlined. It'll be a tighter wobble.
Right.
But as far as out of the box, ready to go, the Ozuri Hydro minnows are definitely the one to go with for sure.
Okay.
And then the bright colors, like he was saying, yellows are good. Anything that's close to white, very good. So this has like bone on it. That's really good. Whites, even like the confetti or the cotton candy, whatever that one's called. But that one's like, those bright colors do really well. And then dark colors like your blacks and purples, those do really well in the low light conditions too. But yeah, as far as like straight out of the box, ready to fish, these come with ready to go split rings, ready to go hooks. Like you don't have to upgrade the hardware. As for SP minnows and Colt Sniper jerkbaits, you will have to.
They're pretty affordable baits too.
Yeah, and they're affordable. That's another thing about it.
I don't know if there are ST66s on there, but they have stout hardware for sure.
They do.
Like you can take those right out of the package and cast them at bluefin or stuff like that without. I do the same thing with SP minnows, because I've both changed hardware on the SP minnows and fished stock hardware, And it definitely changes the way the bait swims. A little bit heavier hook on that bait. It doesn't love it. You have to slow down the retrieve a little bit to keep it in the water. So I just fish them out of the box, and I feel like they swim best. Yeah, the SP minnows, they swim the best with stock hardware. Like they were designed to have a certain set of hardware on them.
I would agree with that for sure.
But there's some different stuff you can do. Like some people will switch to just a belly hook and do like an ST66 of the equivalent size of the stock hook with just a belly hook. And that seems to work fine. It's a little safer releasing fish that way, but definitely take a pair of Boga grips if you're releasing fish, because you definitely don't want to stick your fingers in a cabria's mouth.
No, you don't. I did it with a handful of the smaller ones, just like lipping them like a calico.
Right.
Their teeth aren't like calico. You're going to cut yourself up for sure. Even their gills, oh my God.
Their gills are sharp. Yeah.
Their gill rakes are sharper than like white sea bass or lean cod. Their gill rakes will mess you up for sure.
Thank you.
So when you're handling these fish, like when you grab them by the gill plate, make sure you have a good grip, or like you said, Boga grips. Very, very ideal. I haven't taken the Boga grips. Me personally, it sounds really weird, but I like coming back with cut up hands. I like that's my trophy.
Okay.
Like you coming home with bass thumb, like that's the big reward.
Yeah.
If I can't hold a pencil for 3 days afterwards, like I feel like I had a really good trip,
That's when I bring some extra hundreds for the Pangera that I fish with.
Yeah.
Like, here you go.
Yeah. No, and that's cool too. Is like the Pangera, they almost don't want you to handle the fish. They treat everybody like you're a new fisherman, no matter how talented you are or not, right from the start of them seeing you. They're going to treat you like it's your first time. They don't want you to handle the fish. They don't want you to get hurt, essentially is what it is. They take great care of you on the boat. So like when you land a fish or you're coming in, you just kind of swing your line over to them and he pulls it up, unhooks it. If you want to keep it, it's yours. If you just tell them throw it back, you can throw it back. Or a lot of them too, they want to keep the fish too, so that they can come home and provide for their family as well. Their family, their friends,
That brings up a question I had. So as far as food on the boat, is it pretty regular that people are kind of pitching in their harvest for the day and you're having a big fish meal, or like what does that look like? Every
single lunch and dinner, there's going to be 1 to 2 people that have a fish cooked that was fresh caught. The first cabria I ever had was after our first session of the whole trip in 2022, and it kills me, but somebody killed a golden, and they wanted to eat that one up and fry it up, and they brought it out, and they're like, hey, anybody want to try this? I was like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's the golden. I was like, oh, I mean...
It's almost like moral.
I want to say no, but like it's a cabria. I got to know what it tastes like,
They taste phenomenal.
They taste so good. It is literally the best eating fish I've ever had in my life. And like I come from a family of fishermen myself. My dad and my mom, like we love eating fish. When I brought it home, I was like, I can't wait for you guys to try this. This is the best fish I've ever had in my life. And like my dad was like, oh, really? And my buddy and I were like still vacuum sealing fish, just unloaded the truck. And he's like, can I fry some up right now? I'm like, yeah, here, take a slab. And he goes and cooks it up, and he comes back out and he's like, your mom and I just killed like a whole slab on our own. Like, can I have some more so I can cook some for your buddy and you? And I'm like, oh, for sure.
Oh my goodness.
It's really tasty.
It's so tasty. And like, what's funny is until going on the Tony Reyes, I didn't even know that people kept cabria. I thought that they were treated like calico bass, like this catch and release game fish. That's all I've ever seen in videos. And, I didn't know that was a thing. But the first one I caught was like a little maybe 4-pounder. I'm like geeking out. I'm freaking out, like screaming. Like I made like 3 casts total, and I hook one, and I know exactly what it is. Like there's nothing else that I didn't think there was going to be anything else eating in that shallow. Sure enough, there was yellowtail there too.
Yeah, naturally.
Naturally. Swimming the rocks with them, which was cool. But yeah, I hooked my first one, little 3-pounder, and I'm like freaking out. Pangera's like laughing at me, like, because I'm freaking out over this little 3-pound fish. And I'm like, picture. And he's like, oh, see, yeah, ha ha ha, like laughing at me for it.
He's like, you want a picture of this
Yeah.
one?
And then I'm like ready to throw it back. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm like, no. And he's like, no, keep. That's good. Bueno. And I'm like, really? Not more grande? He's like, no, no, good eating. If you don't want, I keep. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, you can have it. So, like, and I was expecting that, like, he wants to bring home as much fish as possible so that he can sell it and make a few more bucks. But that's not the case. Like, every fish that you give to those guys, they have their family waiting at the dock for them when they come back. Like, if they get to take home some fish and they get to call their family, like, hey, like, we're bringing home fish, like, meet us at the docks. They come with coolers, they're ready. Even all the carcasses, like, turns into, like, broth for soup and stuff like that. Yeah, like, they don't let any part of the fish go to waste. So it's, like, really cool that, like, I'm doing a part to provide for them in a way, as much as, like, I love catch and release, especially with, like, fish like that. I treat it like how everybody likes calico bass. Like, you catch and release them, but we all know they're so tasty.
Yeah. Do you, when you're fishing with the pangeras and all that, do you get to kind of choose the species that you want to target, or do you want to just say, hey, all I want is cabria, or I want to go try yellowtail one day or whatnot?
So I will say, if you have a Spanish-speaking person on your panga, you'll have a little bit more leniency in what you can say, because there's no language barrier there. As far as my pangera this past year, he likes cabria more than anybody I've ever seen. My panga partner last year was Caesar from Phoenix Rods.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he, like, Caesar is diehard cabria. That's the only fish he wants to target. He goes
Cool
out
dude.
there. Yeah, he's super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool guy. He's helped me out so much over the last 2 years. But he goes out for cabria maybe like 10 to 15 times a year, whether he can target them from rocks, from a panga for a single day, go out on Tony Reyes 3-4 times a year. Like, he goes as often as he possibly can. Yeah. Which is awesome. I'm jealous. I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
But his panga partner, his pangera that he likes to fish with, he likes cabria just as much as Caesar does. So, like, instead of when it got slow and we had the option of, like, going to look for yellowtail and stuff like that, we just diehard looked for cabria. But it also helps that, like, our pangera knew that. He knows Caesar well. He knows we want to do cabria. And that slow period, when you'll have a really good shot first thing in the morning, those low light conditions before the sun gets too high, really good. Same thing at night. But when the sun gets up, those fish kind of die off. And when it's like a really slow time, when they're not feeding, when somebody finally hooks one, it's usually a bigger model, like 10 plus pounder. So, like, when it dies, we just grind even harder. And, like, it gets aggravating sometimes, for sure. And nobody likes a slow bite. Like, you know that you can catch fish elsewhere. You know they're biting elsewhere. Some other species going to eat. But just, like, that grind to reward is so much more beneficial for us. Like, that's just what we want to do.
Are they diving? I think I've heard this before, where they're diving down deeper later on in the day just to get into some cooler temp waters.
I would say so, because when it dies off a little bit, and, like, Caesar and I were still chucking the hard baits, trying to get them to blow up on it. Our pangera switched to, like, little, for instance, like, little stuff like this, like little slow pitch stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like 30, 40 gram stuff. And he was yo-yoing them, like, exactly like you would a yo-yo.
Oh.
Drop them down,
Successful?
burn it up like 10, 15 cranks, drop it back down, 10, 15 cranks, drop it back down, over and over. And he was hooking up left and right. Like, so I would say so that, like, you can get those deeper ones. The problem I have with that is, like, now you're so much closer to the rocks. It's so much easier for them to get you in there. So I try to avoid the yo-yo stuff, but yeah, you'll catch them on the yo-yo too. We went, there was one day that we tried to go fishing for, like, there's a fish out there called a jawfish, and they call them, like, a Mexican lean cod, but it's actually a giant jawfish is what it's called. They get maybe 20, 24 inches, nothing huge, and they're pretty lazy fish, but it's fun. I think it's cool. They look like really cool species to me, so I, like, wanted to catch one. While we're fishing for those in, like, 200 feet of water, we're still catching cabria.
Yeah.
You go to the deep reefs, like 150, 200 feet of water, you're still catching cabria, you know? It's like, the cabria are everywhere out there. You'll catch them almost any way that you can think of. But if you want that chuck and wind style of fishing, the hard baits is the way to go. You're bringing those things in as fast as you can, and all of a sudden you hit a wall that just rips line.
Like a freight train.
You can't stop them, dude. Literally butt and drag.
I was going to ask.
Dumbing the spool, and they will take you in the rocks, no problem.
Wow.
60, 80-pound test.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, since you got into it, what kind of setups are you bringing? I think I saw Lexa 400s, bait casters, all that stuff, but go into the setups that you bring.
Yeah, so this was, we got 2 setups over here. My first year that we went, I brought this setup right here. It's a M1 inshore, extra heavy. It's 20 to 45 pound. And I had a Alexa 400 HD on here. This worked really well for me my first year, but after spending a little bit more time targeting them in Bay of LA and doing another Tony Reyes trip with a more proper setup, this one's a little bit better because it's not as stiff. You have a softer tip, which gives them a little bit more time to really get a hold of the bait, exactly, as opposed to such a stiff and fast rod. It almost rips it away from them. So they get a chance to grab onto it, and by the time your rod's loaded up, you're like, oh, dude, this fish is pinned. Mm-hmm. And this past year, I was fishing a Lexa 400 T-Wing. You can get away with the 300s as well. It'll be a little bit more comfortable casting all day. But with how compact the T-Wing was, I still wanted to go 400.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're basically fishing like heavy calico setups is what it comes down to. Like basically a swim bait rod, you know. Mm-hmm. Just make sure you're fishing heavier line. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not even kidding. This was the first time I've ever seen it in my whole life and had experienced it myself. The sheer power of the bite force when I was fishing this one where the rod was too stiff just snapped the braid. 80-pound braid just snapped it.
No kidding.
There was no kink. It's not like I had a fluoro leader with a kink or anything like that. Mid braid line just snapped it because it was just the sheer bite force of the power. I watched him just blow up on it and just, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? And I'm watching, my line just like coils up on the water like that. I'm like, oh, sweet, my line's still there. And while it's like all coiled up, and then I just watch the line straighten out. And I'm like, oh no. And then you just watch the tag end just sink down. And I'm like, crap. That hurt so much more than breaking off on the fish.
That's one of the things too about fishing braid. I mean, you have to fish Spectra to whatever your leader of choice is, but if you unknowingly nicked a rock or something 5 feet up your braid, like, definitely always be checking your braid is something that I learned, because if you have a weak spot in the braid, yeah, like you said, that initial shock,
that initial strike is just uncomparable. And I fish a little bit differently than Caesar does. He likes softer rods. He's figured out his style to not beat up his body as much because he's a little bit older, but his style is a lot more effective hookup ratio wise, for sure. Me personally, I've really grown to like stiffer rods, so it's hard to like lean over to his exact tactics. Like I'll go straight braid to like 10 feet of leader of 60 or 80 pound. And I do that long of a leader just so that if they do get into the rocks, my braid isn't going to touch it, you know. Yeah. That's the only reason why I do that. He does about 25 feet of mono to a titanium leader. And that mono is just, again, that extra little bit of stretch for them to really grab onto that bait. And the hookup ratio, him to me, is like, again, 10 to 1. Mm-hmm. Same with Jorge. But Jorge goes braid to fluoro too. He was our Pongera last year. And both those guys were just roping them left and right. And I'm just sitting here like, dude, how do I stick these things as good as you guys are? And like, I don't know what... Jorge's just done it every day of his life for the last who knows how many years. So he's got it a little bit more figured out. He knows exactly where to cast, what looks good, obviously. But Caesar's figured it out to where, like, his setup is going to help him hook more fish. As opposed to me, I can't do that mono. The stretch scares me. I don't want, as much as, like, that stretch is going to be so much more forgiving on you, I want that backbone. I want to be able to pull them away as fast as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. You have maybe 2 to 3 seconds to turn these fish's head, no matter what size they are. Yeah. I can get into a story about that too. But you have literally 2 to 3 seconds to turn these fish's head before they get you in the rocks. And if they get you in the rocks, chances are you're going to break off. All the rocks down there are all like sharp lava rock. So having that fluoro or having, for instance, a titanium leader like Caesar does, you have a chance at pulling them out before your braid touches the rock, and it's an instant snap at that point.
I would add to that too, that for the fighting technique is to, once you hook them and you've got their heads turned and you've got them out of the rocks, don't stop winding until they're at the boat, because I've had one particular fish just burned into my memory. I had gotten it out of the rocks and I just relaxed a little bit and kind of stopped winding. And when I thought this thing was done, it decided it was going to take a run, and it just took a run straight into a cave, and that was that.
Yeah.
Done deal.
My buddy, my first year we went, I actually have this on video, so I couldn't tell you exactly which episode it was from Tony Reyes 2022, but he got rocked by a 4-pounder, and we thought it was going to be the one. We thought this was going to be the first 15-pounder we saw. You know, he like cranked on it like 4 or 5 cranks, and then it's just like boom, got him in the rock. And again, we're fishing buttoned 80-pound drag, like 80-pound leader, right. Buttoned drag. It rocked him, a 4-pound fish. Like, that's unheard of. Who in Southern California has experienced that outside of Sea of Cortez?
Not very many.
Not very many.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, dude, just wait it out. Like, get it out of there. Like, we see his rod bounce a little bit. I was like, you have a shot at this one. Like, it's moving. Mm-hmm. And he finally, like, it bounces right, and he pulls it out of there, gets, like, 5-6 cranks on it again. Boom, rocks him again. Rocked again. And we finally, like, pulls it out, like, 2 minutes later, gets it to the surface, and I'm like, oh, my God. That's what just kicked your butt right now? Like, he's like, we don't have to tell anybody about this. I'm like, oh, you're wrong. I am telling everybody about this.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. But like, we got back to the mothership. I had to tell everybody about it. Like, dude, he got rocked twice by the same 4-pounder. Like, but that's just it. Like, you have literally 2 seconds to turn this fish's head before it takes you in the rocks. And when you hook a fish over 10 pounds, you know immediately. Like that 7 to 9 pound range, you know it's a good one. The rod loads up really good. It's heavy, and it'll take a couple inches of drag. It's like, I hate to say it because it's like, it's exactly what you've been taught not to do out here.
Yeah.
To thumb the spool, but you have to do it against Cabria. You have to thumb that spool. You have to stop them. And you get like a 7 to 9 pound fish. It'll pull a couple inches. You'll be able to stop them though. But you hook a 10-pounder plus of any size over a 10-pounder, you know immediately. You hook it, and as soon as you're bit, just boom, and you again 2-3 seconds. Like, it ran that much drag, you're already screwed. And like, if you can stop them and turn their head and just capitalize on that line, like you said, just do not stop turning that handle. You have a shot at it.
Yeah.
But until you stop that fish, you might lose it. And that 10-pounder of whatever size could be your trophy. It could be the 20-pound fish. I'm pretty convinced I've broke off on 2-ish 20-pounders. I'm not sure. But officially, as of a few months back, we went to Gonzaga. I was able to catch my first 15-pounder. And that was, And I have, at this point, I have over 20 days of Cabria fishing invested in this. And I caught my first 15-pounder.
Nice.
So, like, that for me is like a big milestone, but I'm still chasing for that trophy, that 20-pound fish. Whether it's going to take me a couple years or not, whether it happens this next trip that I go, it's just that fish that keeps you wanting to go. You want that trophy.
My next question was whether you can get away with 65-pounders, but that sounds like a big negative. Or 65-pound setup rather than 80.
You can get away with a 60-pound setup. So actually, like, the way I fish it is my lighter setup here. I like to run 60-pound leader. It just, the bait will swim a lot better with 60-pound. 80-pound is just a little bit more comfortable because, you have that much more strength to pull them away. But you can get away with 60-pound. I would not fish anything less than 60-pound against Cabria. I highly advise against that because I've heard of people going out there with like 40, 50-pound not knowing what they're doing. You're going to break off just on the strike alone. Like, not only do they have teeth, but like, they're so powerful that it'll just snap your line on the first initial strike. Like, you need like 60 plus pounds. There's people that go out there with 100-pound as their leader. I don't want to go that much because, like, again, I want my bait to swim. Yeah, it's overkill at that point. It may not be. You might need it, but like, it's important that your bait swims correctly. They key in on such a specific action that like you need your bait to swim right. These hydro minnows are great. Like I said, Colt Sniper jerk baits are great too. There's a more tighter wobble, more erratic. So when it's slow, this Colt Sniper jerk bait might be a little more ideal. But getting that bait to swim right, just like a surface iron, getting it to swim right is so ideal. And if your bait's not swimming right, you're kind of losing your shot at these fish.
Man, I'm so excited, Howie. I am so excited. I've been taking notes, all that stuff.
You need to take notes. This is good. This is good.
Yes.
And
yeah.
your trip's not for a while.
I know, August. Well, 4 months, I guess, but still,
It's going to be a long, miserable 4 months.
Yes.
That last month is going to be so dreading. But when the time comes, man, I'm telling you, that drive out there is just the start of the journey.
Yeah, once you get out of Mexicali, like out of the city,
Yeah.
I love driving in Baja.
It's so
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've done Bay of LA and Gonzaga now over this past year, and driving out there is like a part of the journey.
Yeah.
Like did you drive all the way to Loretto, or did you fly out there?
I've driven down the entire peninsula twice.
Wow.
Same.
Wow.
And but when we went to Loretto, flew out of CBX, and
Okay.
It's the way
pretty,
to go.
pretty convenient. Yeah.
But that drive is so beautiful.
But
It's
I've
a
done
terrain
the-
I've never seen before.
Yeah. Done the drive to Gonzaga a handful of times, and I've actually never fished Bay of LA proper. I've just fished Gonzaga.
Okay. Gonzaga's got
and-
a lot
and
more
Loretto.
better models. The population's not as good in my opinion, from my like personal experience, just from Tony Reyes, like witnessing
numbers-wise.
numbers wise. But they're all consistently better grade. We had one day on your last day of the Tony Reyes, you guys will be in Gonzaga Bay. That's where the grouper fishing is going to be. So if you want to do grouper stuff, that's where you're going to need your 100-pound setup. But until that last day, you don't need your 100-pound setup on the boat with you. You don't need it on the Ponga.
So were you guys fishing baby yellowtail on the deep stuff for grouper? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's tight.
I didn't even stand a chance. I had 130-pound line for my leader, and I was like asking if I should fish like 200-pound or even bigger. And the guy that was has been doing it for a few years, and he's like, yeah, like sometimes they won't eat 200-pound if they're a little finicky. So like you want to fish like 100-pound stuff, and you still have a chance. Just you got to be a little bit more patient with them. I'm like, all right, whatever, I trust you. I was like, I can stop these fish. I can't break 100-pound by pulling on it. If I break it, it's going to be because it pulls me in the rock. So like, I was like, I'm good. I'll try. I'll trust his judgment. I'll fish the 100-pound. The first bait that he puts on is a 3-pound yellowtail, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so real. I drop the bait down, and like 16 ounces almost isn't even enough to get that 3-pound yellowtail down. It drops for like a couple feet, and then it stops, and then it drops for a couple feet and stops. It's almost like a mackerel on a sabiki. Like they'll swim up that weight, It's kind of like what it felt like, but obviously just on steroids at this point. And you drop down there, you'll feel the structure, wind up like 5-ish cranks so that you're not like immediately in the rocks. Yeah. And like every once in a while, I'm just like dropping my bait down to feel where my weight's at. And I'm like, oh, there's a rock. Okay, crap. It's going to happen any moment now. I wind up like 3 cranks before it's too late. And I'm like, every single time I felt that structure, I told my buddy Joe, I'm like, are you ready? It can happen any second. We're on top of structure right now. And sure enough, I watched him just lose a fish in half a second. Like,
I was going to say, you have to be quick.
dude, we were so scared. Because we were so scared. We had the rod butt in our waist, sitting on the bench with our foot up on the rail, just like ready to waiting for the bite. And sure enough, he gets bit, and his rod tips in the water and snaps within, like, not his rod didn't snap, the line snapped in like a blink of an eye. I'm like, oh my god. He's like, what did I do wrong? I'm like, dude, you did nothing wrong. I don't think anybody would have stood a chance against that fish.
Yeah.
Sure enough, like next drop, like 10 minutes later, he hooks like a 15-pound cabria. The cabria are still swimming the same reef as them.
Right.
And then here comes my chance. I get bit. And like I was hoping it was going to be like the Goliath grouper videos or like black sea bass videos where you feel like a dunk and you have like a second to like prepare for it and just wench them out. It's not like that. These fish are a different breed. They do not want to leave their hole. So when they bite, they're like out and back in like half a second. So
They're
like
mean.
Yeah, so I'm just death gripping, like white gripping this handle, just ready for it. And all of a sudden, just break. And I'm like, what the?
By the time they load the rod up, they're already
It's already in
halfway
the
back
rock.
to their
Exactly.
hole. Yeah,
Exactly. And
that sounds. Is it straight Gulf grouper pretty much, or
mostly Gulf grouper.
Are there broomtail?
There are a handful of broomtail, but not so many as far as like Gonzaga area goes. The further you get to the end of the peninsula, you'll get a little bit more broomtail, but primarily it is Gulf grouper. You also have sawtail grouper out there that get up to like 80 plus pounds.
yeah?
Most of those bigger ones are caught or shot by divers, but you do have a shot at catching some sawtail. Those are super cool fish too. They have a very jaggedy tail, just like a broomtail, not as long of tassels coming off their tail, but very jaggedy, and they're like bright gray with like a bunch of like orange and brown spots on them. They're super, super pretty fish. We're convinced this past year when we were fishing at Rayford Yellowtail, we're indecisive on what I might have hooked, but I either hooked a big broomtail or not. I'm sorry, a big sawtail, because there was like 3 people that hooked sawtails off that reef, or I either hooked a 40 plus pound yellowtail. We don't know, because there was a couple of those caught off that same reef the same day too. So there's just so much variety in all of these little fishing spots, like. And that's what I love so much about it, being that I'm a species enthusiast. I want to see as many fish species as I can get. I want to catch them all. You know, it's like Pokemon. Like I want to catch them all. But yeah, as far as grouper goes, it's mostly gonna be Gulf grouper, but sawtail is gonna be another bigger one. Cabria, believe it or not, also get upwards of 50 pounds, even though you don't see that. Most of the fish over 20 pounds are usually shot by spear. Excuse me. But yeah, as far as on the deep stuff goes, you have a shot at a 30-pound cabria all day for sure. But yeah, if you hook a big cabria on the jerkbait stuff, chances are you may not land it. 30 plus pound cabria, it's probably going to put you in
Dicey.
the rocks. Yeah. Caesar's been fishing this stuff for 25 years. He barely caught his 30-pounder this past December, I want to say. He went to Gonzaga Bay, literally or not even December.
30 is huge.
Huge.
That's massive.
Massive.
Yeah.
He went a week and a half after we got back from our Tony Reyes trip. So that would have been mid-November. Mm-hmm. And they went to Gonzaga Bay. He sends me a picture of him holding like this 27-pound cabria. I'm like, holy crap, dude. It's like, when did you go? He's like, I'm out here right now. I'm like,
how?
What? We just got back. He's like, oh, I know. And he's like, I think I lost it. And I'm like, like the one that you've been chasing? He's like, I think I lost it. He got it all the way to the boat. And like you were saying, they might get this sudden wind, this second wind. You can't stop turning that handle, because the moment that you give them an upper edge for half a second, they're going to capitalize on it. He said they were in like 40, 50 feet of water when he had it at the boat, and he just kind of looked away for half a second, and as soon as that fish had its head back under the water, didn't stop. Took him all the way back down to the rocks and broke him off. I'm like, no way. He's like, I'm pretty sure that was my 30-pound fish. I'm like, dang, dude, I am so sorry.
That's crazy.
For us, breaking that 20-pound mark is like our trophy, but he's done it plenty of times at this point where like 30 pounds is his trophy. Mm-hmm. You can do it on the deep stuff, but it's not the same. Yeah. We want to do it while power fishing. We want to do it on the jerkbait. We want to do the chuck and wind stuff, you know? Oh, absolutely. It's another level. And if you can get... Holy crap, dude. Just thinking about a 30-pound cabria on a calico stick is insane, you know?
Yeah. How was the general, like, sea life stuff on your trip? Did you see anything cool, like whale sharks, big manta rays, any, like,
I
stuff
haven't
like
seen the more exotic stuff yet.
Yeah.
You're going to see at least 100 sea turtles on your trip. I can almost promise that.
Yeah.
There's sea turtles everywhere. I hate it, but no, I'm not saying I hate the sea turtles. I'm saying I hate what every single Pongera makes the same joke of, a turtle comes up and we're all stoked. We're like, oh, look, sea turtle. And he's like, super. And I'm like, no, no super. But yeah, back in the day, they used to eat turtle soup, and I guess it was incredible. Huh. I don't think I could do it.
Nope.
But yeah, apparently it's really good. So for them, it's like funny to make that joke, but like it hurts my feelings a little bit.
Yeah, not for me.
That's probably the more exotic things I've seen. But like, there's so much sea life out there. There's going to be sea lions everywhere. In May, when we went to Bay of LA, we saw a handful of mako sharks swimming around everywhere. We saw tons of whales swimming around everywhere. Each day,
That's interesting.
Yeah, we saw free jumping makos doing backflips like a handful of times.
Wow.
Almost like twice a day sometimes, which is really cool. We had like a 10, 12 pounder, or I'm sorry, 10 to 12 footer swimming under the boat at one point while we were like fishing deep structure. And I'm like, oh my God, look at this thing. I was like, nobody fall in the water right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those pongas don't have rails. There's not a whole lot of protection. Like one little trip, you're in the water with that thing. But
don't lose your footing.
No, exactly. But yeah, there was whales everywhere out there. I haven't seen a whale shark or a manta ray yet, but that's something I do want to see. If I see a whale shark, it's going to be hard for me to not jump in the water. I want to swim with one so bad. I just want to touch a dorsal fin, I just want to touch one.
Yeah. Going back to setups really quick, how many would you suggest us bringing per person?
It depends what all you want to do. It really does.
Assuming a lot of cabrilla fishing.
If you want to do just cabrilla fishing and then have the opportunity at yellowtail if they pop up, you might need 5-ish rods, similar to like sport boat fishing. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do everything, you can take like 8+ rods, and each day could be something new. Yeah. But as far as what we're talking about, yeah, cabrilla fishing, yellowtail fishing, you can get away with 2 jerkbait rods, one heavier, one a little bit lighter. Definitely bring a bass setup for the mothership fishing, because that's a lot of fun fishing corvina, sculpin, triggerfish, porgies, like a bunch of different stuff that you can catch on the mothership. So definitely bring a bass rod, like a true spotty rod. And then yellowtail, bring a surface iron rod. I didn't use one once this past year in September. I brought my surface iron rod, but I didn't bring it on the Ponga once. I just didn't see the activity for it. Mm-hmm. And I knew that if I brought my surface iron rod, it's going to force me to want to fish cabrilla on it. And I just knew numbers-wise, it's just not ideal. Mm-hmm. I have one single cabrilla on the surface iron out of, I want to say, invested maybe 10 hours into surface iron fishing for them. I have one cabrilla on the surface iron. I brought that surface iron too. It's actually a steel bait. So same thing, you want tight, fast swimming jigs. Mm-hmm. And steel bait is a very tight, fast swimming jig when you can get them to stay under. This is the one I got it on. And I got like a 13.7 on this one.
Nice.
So super stoked. But other ones that would be a nice fast swimming jig, like Salis 7X, Tatty 4Os, or even like a Tatty C. And you kind of want to focus on those brighter colors or darker colors, like I mentioned. So like bright yellows, whites, blues, or for instance, I really like dark stuff, so I like the purple and black.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But numbers wise, yeah, definitely the hard baits. Getting off track there though. But like setups wise, yeah, it just depends on what you want to do. It really does. Mm-hmm. If you want to do a bunch of different species, if you want to do the deep water, big grouper stuff, that's an extra setup. If you want to do speed jigging for yellowtail, that's an extra setup. So it just, keep in mind what species you really want to focus on, and that's going to kind of dial it in for you. You don't have to take all those setups on the Ponga every single day. They bring what rods you want to fish. So like, even though we might have 5-6 setups on the mothership, I might only take three setups on the Ponga each day, It just depends on what you want to do. And there's 2 sessions per day, by the way, if you didn't know that already.
I was going to say, you come back for lunch or something, right?
You come back for lunch at 12 every day. You come back for lunch, and you have like an hour or 2 break to kind of like regroup. And during that time frame, sometimes they'll even move to a new destination. Like you'll have a morning session in one spot, they'll come and eat for lunch, they'll like tie up all the Pongas, and they'll move on to a new destination, whether it's an hour away, 2 hours away. And they'll go to a new fishing destination, and from there you're now fishing a new area. And you can ask your Pongera, like, hey, what do you recommend for this stop? And Like, definitely bring all your tackle with you each day. If you want to leave a box behind, depending on like which species you're going to be focusing on, that's fine. But like, bring everything you need, like everything. Not necessarily sinkers and hooks and stuff like that. Like, if you do want to do the grouper stuff, that's not going to happen until the last day. But as far as like what setups you want to bring, yeah, you can bring as many as you want. You can bring 20 setups if you wanted to. But as far as like fishing on the Ponga each day, maybe like 3 or 4.
What's the whole process like getting from the mothership into the Ponga? Is that because I saw some photos of Pongas in tow behind the mothership? That's probably like when they're kind of relocating or whatever and moving slow, obviously. But when you're deboarding the mothership onto the Ponga and then getting back onto the mothership, what does that whole thing look like?
So each day, overnight, they usually spend the night of traveling to a new destination. And when they do that long distance travel, they have a crane where they'll lift the Pongas out of the water and drop them on the back of the boat. And they'll stack 3 Pongas high at 3 rows. So there's 9 total Pongas. And it's actually a really, really cool process to watch, just watching them, because it's very Mexico. Like, it's as Mexico as it gets in the middle of the ocean. So, like, you'll see, like, all this stuff, like rusted chains and stuff. I think it's pretty cool. It adds to the whole experience, in my opinion.
It's the vibes.
It is. Like, things are just better in Baja, you know?
Yeah.
But, they lift them by crane, drop them in the water. You'll hop on the Ponga for the day. And if you're just doing, like, a little 1-hour move to a new spot, they'll just tie up the Pongas behind the boat as long as the weather permits it. If it's too choppy, you'll sink the Pongas. They'll catch water and stuff, being that they're, like, held by a rope that's going to be dipping the bow a little bit more. But if the weather permits it, they just tow them behind the boat, which I thought was super cool. But if they're doing a long distance destination, then they'll pick them up by the crane and drop them back on the boat. And
stepping in from the mothership into the Ponga is pretty easy. Do they have a set of stairs or something, or like how does that work?
No stairs.
Yeah,
like I said, very Mexico. So it's like either
if it's to get a ladder.
Yeah, if it's near the door, it's a little bit easier where you can like step down onto the Ponga and then step down onto the bench, step down on the ground. You know? So it's almost its own set of stairs. But if it's not near the door, because let's say one Pongera is still waiting for his group of guys, but like your Pongera is ready and you're ready, you'll climb over the rail of the mothership and then climb down into the Ponga.
Gotcha.
It's a little bit more tricky, but it's not scary in any way.
Yeah,
They're
for
not
somebody who's a little bit less like physically
mobile.
capable or something, no issues getting into the Ponga. Like, would you say the crew is there to help?
The crew's there to help. They don't want you to hurt yourself in any way. So, like, if you need a hand, like, they'll hold your hand, you know? Like, if you need that help, they're going to help you. Or if they know that, let's say, like, an older gentleman was on board. We had I believe, an 80-year-old guy on board with us 2 years ago, the first year we went. So he couldn't climb over the rail. They had to wait to use the door. So like, they'll work with you. They'll do what they need to. But yeah, it's as long as you're like physically capable, there's chances you're going to climb over the rail of the mothership to get into the boat.
How does the whole process in getting like assigned to a Panga and actually like deciding who you're going to fish with every day and all that?
I will say the returning passengers that have built that bond with a specific Pongera, they kind of have a first jurisdiction. After that, it's just kind of like random assignments. But if you hear of Pongeras that you seem to like, that you want to fish with, maybe talk to your charter master and say like, hey, is this Ponga available? If so, I want to fish with him. For us, if you want to do strictly Cabrilla stuff, we were fishing with Jorge, and he was phenomenal. All those guys know how to fish Cabrilla. But like Jorge really, he doesn't waste time. If he sees no fish caught in like 3-4 casts, he's like, all right, vamos, let's move. And I really respected that. Like, it's like run and gun action in that aspect. The first year we went we fished with Captain Joel or Joel, and I really liked the way he did it because he got really close to the rocks and he would just drift or he would just keep on motoring. Like, he would come, like, fish a whole stretch of beach, whether it was like a mile or two. We'll fish it, and he just wants to figure out which fish is, like, which area is biting. And I really liked the way he did it. because he fished the morning session as like an exploratory mission. So he would do those stretches on multiple different beaches and figure out which one's biting, and if it bit, he'll circle back around and redrift that spot and do it again until it stops biting. And then at the end of the day on our afternoon session, he didn't go to any of those in-between spots that didn't bite. He went directly to each and every point that he saw that bit. So I kind of liked how he did it. But every Pongera fishes them a little differently. And, like, you just kind of have to adapt to the way they fish it, but still communicate with them. Like, if you want to get a little bit closer to the rocks, like, poquito más closer, you know? Like, I don't speak any Spanish whatsoever, but I speak fishing, you know? Like, you learn a little bit. I mean, you said you've been to Cedros. You'll learn a little bit of Spanish, whether you know it or not. So, like, I speak fishing. I don't speak Spanish in any way.
Joel is a fisheries biologist in Baja, I'm pretty sure.
Is
out
he?
of Bay of LA. I'm pretty sure he is. If it's the same guy.
Are you? Oh, out of Bay of LA. You're thinking of
Not that there's
Joel Jr.?
I don't know.
Okay, I know exactly who you're talking. I fished with him in Bay of LA last year.
Okay.
Yeah, he is a marine biologist.
Different guy.
Different guy.
Gotcha.
Different guy.
So if, as far as the whole trip goes altogether, are there any things that you suggest bringing, whether it could be fishing related or, bunk related or anything like that? Anything that you can give tips on?
Bring plenty of hard baits.
Yeah.
Plenty. That's like the biggest number one thing that I can say. Like, if you think you have enough hard baits, you might be wrong. Because if the bite is really good, that's that situation where I told you my line snapped. In 45 seconds, that happened 3 times.
Oh.
I snapped my line. Our captain, why am I blanking on his name now? I've said his name so many times. Our captain Jorge, thank you.
Yeah.
Our captain Jorge followed up right behind us, hit the exact same spot. Another one blew up. Dum, psh, snapped his line. He puts that rod down, grabs his other rod, casts the exact same spot, psh, snaps that line.
Oh my God.
Like 3 casts in a row. And like specific spots just hold monsters. And like if you can see 3 hard baits break off in a matter of 45 seconds, like, and you think that 5 jerk baits is enough, you're wrong. I hate to say it, but you're going to be wrong about that. If you get one good bite, you can go through a lot of baits really quick.
So what I'm hearing is bringing like 3 3600 Plano boxes full of hard baits or stick baits.
My buddy Caesar does exactly that, and he still feels like it's not enough.
Oh my God.
Me personally, I'll bring
Start collecting
one.
them now.
Yeah, exactly. Like every paycheck, buy like 3 or 4, pretty much. That's what I kind of do in preparation. But I bring like one full 3600 box of all 170s, and then I'll have an extra like 3600 box of like smaller jerk baits and like mess around stuff. And like one full box should be right around enough. But if you want a specific color, bring plenty of them. And like I said, don't be afraid to dabble in every single color. Every ponga, every person's going to find their one confidence color that produces really well for them. They'll eat every single color you throw at them. They really will. But everyone has their same confidence colors.
And how about anything for sleeping arrangements or anything like that?
Sleeping wise, you definitely want to bring at least a sleeping bag and a pillow, because they don't provide any kind of bedding. It's just like a sport boat. It's bring your own bedding. And then they do have showers, restrooms, so bring your toiletries as well. If you have any kind of medical issues, like make sure to bring as needed, obviously. But yeah, basically prep like you would for a sport boat, like.
Nice.
Exactly how you would do for an overnight
Gotcha.
or a multi-day, for instance. Like bring enough clothes. If you want to save a little bit on clothes, you can wash your clothes if you want to. Caesar kind of brings like a bucket and some laundry detergent, and he just washes them by hand so that
So
he
you
doesn't
can pack a little lighter.
So you can pack a little lighter and focus on bringing more fishing gear.
Yeah, he makes up for it in gear.
Yeah. For instance, when I go to Cedros, I do the same thing. I bring like 2 pairs of clothes. I bring the pair I'm wearing as like a relaxation, and then I bring 2 fishing clothes. 1 pair for the day of, and then when I come home, I can have them wash it that day and wear the clean pair the next day.
Yeah.
And kind of cycle through. That way I don't have to bring a whole extra bag of clothes,
Yep.
Nice. But as far as Tony Reyes goes, I'm too lazy to wash my clothes at the end of the day. I'm just trying to have a good time. So I bring enough clothes for one pair per day. You can't, it's almost impossible to overpack for the Tony Reyes because like everything stays on the mothership. Anything you want to bring, feel free to bring it. And whatever you want to bring on the Ponga each day, just make sure that's what you want to bring, you know? As far as like flavored drinks goes, they're going to have sodas, they're going to have waters. And then, like I said, they'll have bottomless beers too, all included in the price. But if you want to bring Gatorades or something, that's something you'll have to bring, whether it's like packets to make flavored water and get your electrolytes, or if you want to bring a case of Gatorade, you can do that too.
So Gatorades, liquid IVs for August.
Sure. Yeah. I would recommend it for sure. And then I think that's about it, really. Like just
nice.
And snacks too. Like they're not going to have a whole lot of like chips and cookies or anything like that. So if you want to bring snacks for each day on the Ponga, like snacks is going to kind of be on yourself.
Man, I'm so looking forward to this. This is you're right. This 4-month period is going to be brutal.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be absolutely brutal.
And the more you look back at this episode, you're going to be like dreading it even more. So
I know. Well, Ray, this has been fun, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me, man. This has been such a fun episode. I like this. This is my first podcast ever that I've been
Hell
on.
Yeah.
So like I'm super stoked that we got to touch on such a fun subject for this one.
Yeah. Well, before we let you go, do you have any sponsors to hit you'd like to recognize or anything like that?
Yes. Let me open this up so I don't forget anybody.
And while you do that, we're definitely going to have you on again. You have to make the trip down to San Diego once more. We'll go chat.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would love to come out and like just even if we go fish and like hang out, like I'm super down. Or if we do another episode based on something else, I'm super down for that too.
Or just another Tony Reyes trip, like in late July-ish before we go and all that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, if you want to do that before you go, I'm down to come back out and talk more about it. That'd be fun.
Cool.
I want to hear a recap.
Oh, for sure.
Trip recap. That's what I want.
Absolutely.
Oh, and that'll be a good time too because I'll come back from Bay of LA by that time, and like we'll have a little bit more to talk about too.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
But as far as sponsors go, I want to give a big shout out to like Ops and Fluorocarbon, Real Happy Clothing, BD Outdoors, Tatty Lures, Phoenix Fishing Rods, Richwind Lures, Sudden Impact Swim Baits, and Steel Baits have been big supporters of me for a long, long time. And then Eric's Tackle's been taking care of me the last couple of years as well.
Excellent. Right up there in Ventura.
Yes, right there in Ventura.
Nice.
My local shop.
Nice. And you also have a YouTube page too, so people could go watch your content too.
I do. My channel is Dirty Hookers. So if you want to check out some of these Tony Reyes series, I have playlists. If you want to go on the playlist section, you can check out Tony Reyes, Cedros, spotty fishing, yellowtail fishing, tuna. I got a little bit of everything on there.
Nice.
It sounds like we're all Southern California lovers, so if you're into that Southern California fishery, I got it all on there documented for everyone to check out.
That's cool.
Nice. Well, Ray, once again, thank you so much for coming down, man. Making the trip and all that. We definitely will have to have you back on and talk a little bit more about Tony Reyes and Bay of LA, and we'll have you on towards the end of the year. Give a nice little yearly recap.
Sounds good, man. Let's make it happen. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Howie, I'm just sitting here all giddy and jived, ready to roll for Tony Reyes in August.
I bet you are. I'm trying to scheme on how I can go.
I was going to say, do you have any trips down Baja this summer?
Nothing concrete, no, but I hope to spend a little time in Baja for sure.
You know what? I'm going to go to the Longfin tomorrow. I'll see if there's an extra spot for you.
Okay. Put my name down.
It's after ICAST too, so it'll be good timing.
Good.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode on the CCA California podcast. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram at CCA California. Make sure to go register for the 2024 Star Tournament at joincca.org. And with that, we will see you guys next week. Take care.